is it even possible to have a favourite tree? Because if it was possible to have a favourite tree, I think this one's going to be in the running for me. It's just an ordinary oak tree that sits in the middle of Bicker Fen. So Bicker Fen is in southeast Lincolnshire. It's part of the Lincolnshire Fens. And we're going to go walk up towards something called the Black Sluice or 40-foot drain today, to have a look at what that looks like and what is the last sunrise of August. So I filmed this on the last day of August. We've already seen that. That's now behind us. And it was rather a magnificent sunrise. Didn't quite do what I wanted it to on the tin. I was expecting a bit of a misty dawn this morning, but that never materialised. It was still quite nice though. It's going to be very difficult for you to see there with the sun behind me. But yes, we're on Bicker Fen and we're walking up North Drove towards the South 40-foot or the Black Sluice drain. Bicker Fen then is bordered to the east of me now as I walk in a kind of north direction by the A52 road and Swinsehead, although the area to the right of me now, that's called Swinsehead low grounds. Low grounds because it's very low. It's most of all, quite a lot of the fens around here are either at or below sea level, which of course means they need draining, otherwise we're never going to be able to use them as farmland. Now, Bicker Fen is also bordered on its western edge by probably the feature that it's best known for. The feature that it's best known for is, of course, the windmills, built in 2008. And they've kind of blended into the landscape now as much as they possibly could. Also over there in the distance we've got something called the Viking Link Converter, or the place where the electricity from Denmark comes ashore. Well, it comes ashore actually at Anderson Creek, which is just north of Skegness. But it comes across and it makes its joining, I guess, is the best way to describe it, with the national grid. I don't know if you can see it just in the distance there. There's some sort of green and creamy coloured building in the distance there. That's the Viking Link Converter. And of course that's a connection to the national grid. There's a big substation here as well. And that's meant that the fen has been blighted by the overdevelopment of solar farms. So I'm not going to look at those today. I've covered those enough in other videos that I've done, and this area that we're just about to walk through now though is under threat of further development, and of course that would mean me losing my favourite tree. Yeah, I was kind of hoping, first off I can hope you can hear me as I've got my clip-on microphone this morning, so this is just picking up from the DJI device itself, and I hope that's reasonably clear. It's not too windy this morning, it's a little breezy. You saw by the windmills are milling round, hopefully generating lots of this supposedly cheap electricity. I wonder when we're actually going to get to see that on our bills, but hopefully you can hear me okay. Wasn't quite the sunrise that I was expecting this morning. Yesterday was damp and wet, but the forecast this morning was to be clear skies. It was an okay-ish sort of dawn, really. Hopefully I'll put a few pictures up for you to see. It was okay-ish, but I had expected to see some mist and fog around the ditches and dikes, but of course the ditches and dikes don't actually have any water in them at the moment. It's been a very dry summer, obviously, and yeah, they're pretty dry. And I guess that means they've done their job of draining the land, and that's what it's all about today. Actually, that's what this morning's walk is all about. It's about looking at how this part of the Lincolnshire Fens was drained to make farmland. And there we are, the South 40-foot, or as it's been more known in modern times, the Black Sluice. I'll tell you a little bit about why. I'll tell you a little bit about why it's called the Black Sluice in a second. But there we go. So man-made, referred to as the 40-foot drain. I once, rather stupidly, asked a local why it was called 40 foot. It's obviously not 40 foot deep. Well, it's 40 foot wide. Oh yeah. So from bank to bank it's 40 foot wide. So dug by hand. As I say, there's been several different iterations of the South 40 foot drain. There's been extensions to it and a widening of it in time. So we're going to walk now west in towards that glorious sunset. We're going to walk west and we're going to walk up to a place called Swinsehead Bridge. And Swinsehead Bridge has a almost like a transport hub, really, because there's a railway station there, and I think I deduced that it was the 7th least used railway station in the whole country. But there is a railway station there, and a railway line that runs adjacent to where we are now, just slightly to the north of us, meets up at Swinsehead Bridge with the South 40-foot drain and the A17 trunk road as well. So it is quite a transport hub, I guess, in the day. Well, it still is today, to be fair. Only there's not many trains and there's not much in the way of river traffic or water traffic. Rather magnificent. So of course, not only does the body of water take the drainage from the fens, it's also a protector from the sea floods. So there is a sluice at Boston called the Black Sluice, not surprisingly. And until quite recently there was a pumping station there. It's not pumped anymore, although there are pumping stations along the way. So it has, I guess, kind of a dual role, really. It is a drain for this part of the fens, but it's also a protection against tide surges, which have over time deluged this land around this area. And of course that makes it not only uninhabitable but unfarmable. So I guess it kind of, I'm no water engineer, but I guess it kind of serves two purposes there, really. On the north side, there are still the remnants of several abandoned farmhouses. And of course the droves, or the roads, call them droves really, the droves once did join up from the northern side. There was no, in the days before the drain was built, there was, of course, the roads continued interrupted. There's no bridges. We're walking towards Swinsehead Bridge now, where we joined the 40-foot trail. It's called the Brown. Oddly, it's called the Brown Fen Trail. But where we joined that, we're probably about equidistant from Swinsehead Bridge to the east and Donington Bridge to the west. But there are no bridges. Those two bridges are the bridges that cross, so there's probably, I don't know, 5 or 6 miles between the two. There once was a ferry that ran, I may be wrong, but I think it's from here. I think if we look at a map, you can see on the map marked ferry, and that was in the 1800s, of course. And that, if I've got my map in right and where I am right, it was from here. So as you can see, there's a ground there. I believe there were some old buildings there too that have since been demolished. But from here, just behind that wall, I guess that's the remnants of the buildings that were here. Still the remnants of the building. That's concrete breeze block. I'm not quite sure when that first came into use. But from here across, and you can see an old building over in the other bank.
Okay, let's just jump into the maps to have a look where we are. So I'm using the National Library of Scotland side-by-side maps, which gives us an idea of what things used to look like in the 1800s versus the modern Google satellite image there. So you can see Boston there to our west, and you can see, if you look on the map on the left hand side, you can see the line that I'm tracing down there with the cursor. That's the line of the 40-foot drain, or the Black Sluice, that we're following today. So let's zoom in a little bit closer and keep your eye on the right hand map, and you can see there where we entered the South 40-foot drain, the walk, the Brown Fen Trail. So we entered here. Where I entered there, you can see there was a farm that used to stand there. So we've walked along here to this point here, and I pointed out the ferry used to run across there, and you can see that clearly marked on the map, and the abandoned buildings the other side of the drain. So zoom out a little bit and let's have a look where we're going to go then. So have a look at the right hand map now. We're going to go around this bend here. There's going to be a pumping station here. When we get to that point there, you're going to see that the railway comes and runs parallel to the drain until we get to Swinsehead Bridge, and that's the end of the walk today, and we're going to have a look around Swinsehead Bridge. When we do get to Swinsehead Bridge, you're going to see that the line of the original A17 here, before it's called the A17 obviously, the line of the original A17 goes in front of the barge inn, whereas now that's kind of been sort of isolated on its own in a sort of ghost road. So it's interesting to see that the junction with the Boston Road, which is this road here, actually used to come here rather than where it does now on this piece here.
So Black Sluice then, why is it so called? Well, evidently the people who lived and took their living and food from the fens in the traditional ways of wildfowling, fishing, etc., they became upset that there was an attempt to drain the land and turn it into simply be used as arable farmland, and to such an extent it upset their way of life that evidently some of them took action, and that action included burning the lock gates at Boston, or burning the sluice gates, which of course turned them charcoal and black, hence the name the Black Sluice. This is rather a dark name for it. It's a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful part of the world, and a very much underrated walk, may I say, especially early in the morning. And of course, do this walk in the reverse. In the evening, you have the sun setting to the western end of the 40-foot drain. So we're on the trail. We're heading west towards Swinshead Bridge. It's quite a good trail, quite easy to walk. Obviously it's very flat, and it's on the banks of the 40-foot drain. Obviously these banks were put here by hand. It was obviously hand dug, so it's man-made. There's sometimes some cattle roaming freely up here. Haven't bothered me today. I haven't seen any of them today, to be fair. I've seen plenty of evidence of them. Try not to tread in it. But I haven't seen them today. But they're quite friendly. Always obviously have to be careful with livestock. Make sure you close the gates, etc. There's not really very far for them to go up here. So yeah, it's quite a good trail, Brown Fen trail. And I believe it does extend all the way from Boston. You can walk it, and I do intend to walk it, not today, all the way from Boston to the confluence with the River Glen, just the other side of Surfleet. So what's this all about then? Where are we? We are in the southeast corner of Lincolnshire. We're kind of southwest of Boston. Boston is the mouth of both the River Withams and the River Welland. So the River Glen joins the Welland at Surfleet, and then that goes on as one body of water to Boston, or towards Boston, and then joins up with the River Witham in what is known as the Boston Haven. And you've got the docks, the commercial docks at Boston, which gave the town its fame and indeed its wealth back in the day. So this area of Lincolnshire was once, is still known in many places as Lindsey, and the catchment area for the drain that we've got to our left now, the catchment area for that, the land it was draining, is a vast stretch of land in that part of Lincolnshire that was called Lindsey. As I mentioned earlier, the twin threats of water coming from the higher ground towards the west, towards Grantham, not far as you leave Donington on the A52, travelling west towards Grantham, the countryside changes somewhat, and you've gone from the flat fenland to a more hilly version. To the north of us, we've got the Lincolnshire Wolds. So we've got water coming from the land on the higher ground, and you've got water obviously in the low marshy lands that we now know as the fens that were there previously. And of course you've got the threat of tidal surge from the Wash and the Haven. So there have been 3 various attempts to drain this land. Wonder what that was. It was a swan. 3 various attempts to drain this land, but you could probably trace some of those earlier attempts way back to medieval times. But in more recent times, the 1600s, there was an attempt to build some drains around this area by hand, and those drains are still evident now to the north of us. The early version that made its outfall into the Haven at Boston through a sluice. Probably the one that was the more, shall we say, adventurous was the middle one. The Earl of Lindsey had commissioned that in the 1700s. and that built what we currently see today to our left, as far as probably where we started this walk today, 8 miles west of Boston. In the 1800s, that was extended further towards its confluence with the Glen at Surfleet, and this section that we're on now was widened. There's been some various works done on it recently as well, in an attempt to make it accessible to boats. Obviously the leisure traffic. At one point the sluice was navigable, but only for commercial craft. At one point the sluice was navigable, but only for commercial craft. I don't know what it'd serve much use today, really, when it doesn't really go anywhere. There's no really... Maybe a railhead at Swinsehead, possibly. I don't know. But the attempt recently to open it up for pleasure craft, you very, very occasionally see a boat on it. From what I understand, you need a permit, and also you need to get through the lock at Boston to get onto the navigable section of the Drian. Having said that, they have built some pontoons at Hubbart's Bridge and Swinshead, but as I say, you very rarely see anything other than a kayak or a canoe coming down here, which is a shame because it would be a beautiful stretch of water to take a narrow boat or a pleasure cruiser. and the railway, which is the Swinsehead, but it's called Swinshead Bridge. And the Swinshead Bridge is around about 2 miles from the village of Swinsehead itself. It's a hamlet in its own right. There was two pubs. I think one of them was on this side, approaching shortly, and the other one, which closed much more recently, the Barge, on the other side. But the railways came to Swinsehead in 1859, so the line we saw earlier was built in 1859, or completed in 1859, bringing the railways to Swinsehead, and then ultimately Hubbart's Bridge, and then ultimately Boston, which is probably about 6 miles still in that westerly direction. There we are, the A17 trunk road running pretty much north to south from King's Lynn down in North Norfolk to Sleaford. And on to Newark. So the A17 trunk road running north to south there from King. I've stood the other side of the bridge now, across the A17. It's a bit busy, you might hear a lot of noise in the background. It's early on a Sunday morning, but that's the view from the other side of the bridge as the South 40-foot drain heads down towards Boston. We swing round and we can see we're going to be crossing the level crossing here, and you'll see Swinshead Bridge Station down to our right. Yeah, if like me you like a bit of a ghost road, this is the Barge Public House. It looks like it's been shut. I can't remember it being open. It looks like it's been shut some time, but what I'm walking on now would have been the original alignment of the A17, so the barge would have fronted the A17, and the junction with the Boston Road would have been right in front of me here. So instead of the junction being now a little way behind me, so the new junction, if you want, is just by those white signs there. The old alignment would have been slightly to the east of where it is now, and on the road that I'm standing on, and then it would have kind of bent round from here and crossed Swinshead Bridge, just where you see that lorry going across now. So a little bit of a ghost road, and as I say, what I'm walking on now is the junction of the Boston Road and the A17. Spin you around there for a better view. There we go. So there we go, a bit of an impromptu walk this morning. The purpose was to try to get a sunrise. A misty sunrise, didn't quite work out that way, but hopefully you've enjoyed coming along with me on that little walk along the South 40-foot drain, or the Black Sluice. Remember, it's called the Bicker Fen Trail if you want to look it out. So thank you very much indeed, and I'll see you on the next one.